Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. To our lecturer, Madam Shaza and fellow friends, today we would like to present about the country of Algeria. Before that, let me introduce the members of group who are Fatimah Az Zahra, Siti Fatimah, Nur Safiah, Nabilah Syamini, and Siti Az Zahra. Now, let me start with introduce about the country of Algeria. Algeria is the biggest country in Africa, was located in northern Africa. The capital of Algeria is Algiers and was divided to 48 wilayas. Based on my study about this country, there is 2.4 million square kilometers of land from the Blue Mediterranean Sea to the Brown Sahara Desert. This is the flag of Algeria. What does the Algerian flag represent? The first one, the star and crescent, means the symbols of the nation's Islamic heritage, and they are displayed in red in order to represent the bloodshed by Algerians during the Algerian War of Independence. The white part of the field is a symbol of peace and purity, and the green part represents the wealth of country. Let's know the fact about this country. First, the official currency used in Algeria is known as the dinar. Second, Algeria has a population of about 44 million of people in 2020. Third, the major and spoken language are Arabic, and the other language is Berber and French. Fourth, Islam is the majority religion in Algeria, and Algeria's economy is dominated by natural gas and petroleum. And lastly, the expectancy of people's life in Algeria for men is 75 years, while 77 for women. This is the organization chart of Algeria government. They have president and prime minister, and actually there are many more ministers in Algeria government, but in this slide I just mentioned the main minister, such as Minister of Finance, Minister of Justice and Keeper of the Seals, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Minister of Industry, Minister of Religious Affairs and Waqf, Minister of National Education, and Minister of Health, Population and Hospital Reform. The type of government in Algeria is semi-presidential system, which is executive presidents as the head of state and prime minister as the head of government. Based on my study about this, there are two views that say Algeria use semi-presidential system, and one more said Algeria use presidential system. And if we look at the structure that I presented before, it shows a semi-presidential system because it has a prime minister as head of government, and a standard presidential system would have president as head of state and government. However, in practice, the president is very powerful, so it appears like a presidential system. So from that, I can conclude the actual government of Algeria is semi-presidential system, but only the practice in Algeria look like presidential system. Now, I will share the history of Algeria. In year 1830 to 1962, Algeria was occupied by France, and more than 1 million Algerians were killed in the War of Independence from France, and finally succeed in forcing the French to surrender independence to the country in 1962. And then in year 1988, the government of Algeria was established a multi-party system in response to the demands of civilians. In year 1991, following the success of the first round of the Islamic-based party, the Islamic Salvation Front, in the legislative election, invite Algerian military leaders to postpone the second round of election for fear of religious extremist riot over Algerian political leadership. In year 1992 to 1998, the crackdown on FIS then pushed FIS supporters to attack government targets. The fighting led to the killing of villagers by extremists. In year 2000, FIS, stand for Front Salvation Islam, was dissolved in January. Abdelaziz Bouteflika, with military support, won the presidency in 1998 election. He also won subsequent election in 2004, 2009, and 2014. On 2011, the government of Algeria introduced several political reforms in response to the Arab Spring, including lifting a 19-year emergency ban and increasing the quota for women for elected bodies, while increasing subsidies to the population. In 2019, the protest to overthrow the Bouteflika regime by citizens demanding system change. It happened because Abdelaziz Bouteflika announced that he would join in the fifth term of the Algerian presidential election. Now, let me move to the first topic, which is the leadership of Algeria. Who is the current leader in Algeria? The current president is Abdelmajid Tebboune, who won the Algerian presidential election on 12 December 2019, and the Prime Minister is Abdelaziz Dejrat since 28 December 2019. Let's we know a little bit about the President of Algeria. Abdelmajid Tebboune was born on 17 November 1945 in Algeria, and he became the 8th President of the North African nation since gaining independence from France in 1962, majoring in economics and finance, and he was graduated from the National School of Administration in 1965. And the last one is current situation, which is on 3rd November 2020. It was reported that Abdelmajid Tebboune tested positive for COVID-19. This is Abdelmajid's political career. He was a Minister of Communication and Culture from December 1999 to June 2000, and became a Minister Delegate for Local Government on June 2000 to May 2001, and started on September 2012. He was a Minister of Housing and Urban Planning. Then he was assumed as Minister of Commerce on Jan until May 2017. And the last one, he was a Prime Minister from May until August in 2017, and now become a President of Algeria.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Now I will continue our group presentation with the next topic, which is the branches of government in Algeria. But before that, let me introduce myself first. My name is Siti Fatimah binti Khairul with the metric number 171472. As we know, there are 3 branches of government that we have learned in our class. So for this time, let's look at the 3 branches of government in Algeria, which are: the first one is the legislative, second is the executive, and the third one is the judiciary. So let's see these 3 branches of government in Algeria one by one. The legislative. There are 2 types of organization of the legislature, which are unicameral and bicameral. But the organization of the legislature in Algeria is bicameral, as it consists of 2 chambers. The first chamber is the Council of the Nation, and the second chamber is the National People's Assembly. So let's look at these 2 chambers under the legislature in Algeria one by one. So firstly, let's look at the Council of the Nation. The Council of the Nation, also known as the Upper House, which consists of 144 seats. 1/3, which is 48 of members, are appointed by the President, and 2/3, which is 96 of members, are indirectly elected by an electoral college. So how many years the members of the Council of the Nation will serve for the country? The answer is the members of the Council of the Nation will serve 6 years term, with 1/2 of the membership renewed every 3 years, whereby the last election was held on 29 December of 2018, and the next election will be held in December of 2021. Alright, the next chamber, which is the second chamber, is the National People's Assembly, which is also known as the Lower House, which consists of 462 seats, including 8 seats for Algerian living abroad, which is the Algerian which living outside of their country, which is outside Algeria. So how does the members of the National People's Assembly are elected? So the members of National People's Assembly are directly elected through a closed list proportional representation vote. What does it mean? How does the system of closed list proportional representation works? So in closed list proportional representation, voters cast a single vote for their preferred party rather than voting for a person from that party. Before the election, parties set a list of candidates who are elected in the order they are placed on the list. It is typically left to the party's internal process to set their candidate list. In the system, voters choose which party wins, but have little control over who their specific representatives are. In addition, the National People's Assembly, the members of the National People's Assembly will serve 5 years term in their country, whereby the last election was held on 4 May of 2017, and the next election will be held in May of 2022. Next, let's look at the second branches of government, which is the executive in Algeria. As the type of government in Algeria was semi-presidential system, Thus, there is a difference and separation between head of state and head of government and the executive. So now, let's look at the head of state first. The head of state of Algeria is the president of Algeria, which is President Abdelmajid Tebboune, and he was being the president of Algeria since 12 December 2019. Do you know how does the election of the president, which is the head of state in Algeria, was held? So the answer is the election of the president was elected by absolute majority popular vote in two-round system. The two-round system is the most famously used in the election of the president. So the two-round system is highly disproportional and artificially boosts large parties. So how does it work? On the first election day, voters mark their preferred candidate with an X. If the candidate wins 50% of the vote, they are elected. Otherwise, a second ballot, which is the second election, is held, usually 2 or 3 weeks later. The last election was held for the president is on 12 December of 2019, and the next election for the head of state will be held in 2024. And the years that the head of state will be served for the country of Algeria, which is 5 years terms. Now let's move on to the head of government. Since the president is the head of state, that means the head of government was the prime minister of Algeria, which is the prime minister Abdelaziz Jarrah, and he was being the prime minister of Algeria since 28 December of 2019. How does the prime minister was appointed in the Algeria? So the prime minister of Algeria, which is the head of government of Algeria, was appointed by the president itself, after the president making the constitution with the majority party in parliament. Then there will be the prime minister after the consultation. How many years the prime minister, which is the head of government, will serve for the country? So it was same. The number of years the head of government will serve for the country was same like the number of years of the president will serve for the country of Algeria, which is the prime minister will serve 5 years term. How about the cabinet of ministers in Algeria? How does the ministers of the Algeria appointed? So the cabinet of ministers in Algeria was appointed by the president. Last but not least, let's look at the third branch of government, which is the judiciary. So we're gonna look under the judiciary of the Algeria. So the first one is the Supreme Court. Second is the Constitutional Council, and basically the Supreme Court and the Constitutional Council is the most important thing under the judiciary branch of government. In addition, there are other matters or other authorities discussed under the judiciary branches, which is the first one, jurisdiction of the first degree, which is the court. Second one is the jurisdiction of the second degree, the courts of appeal. Next, the court of auditors. Next is the administrative jurisdiction. Then the last one is the state council. First, let's look at the Supreme Court. In Algeria, Supreme Court is the highest court, which consists of 150 judges. The question is, how can the judges be appointed? How does the judges of the Supreme Court are appointed? The answer is the judges of the Supreme Court, which is the 150 judges, are appointed by the High Council of Magistracy, an administrative body presides over the President of the Republic and includes the Republic Vice President and several members. Like I said before, the Supreme Court consists of 150 judges, and these 150 judges are organized into 4 divisions, which are civil and commercial, social security and labor, criminal, and the last one is the administrative. Is there any limit here for the Supreme Court to serve for a country? As the Supreme Court in Algeria is the highest court in Algeria, thus there is no limit term for the Supreme Court to serve for the country. The appeals in cassation can be introduced to the Supreme Court only for the following. So let's look, what is the function, what is the case are defined under the Supreme Court. What does the Supreme Court do in the law, in the judiciary of government, judiciary in Algeria? So the first one, the Supreme Court will handle the case which is related to the incompetence or abuse of powers. Second is the basic lack of legal merit. Next, the Supreme Court also will handle the cases which are related with the violation or omission of the substantial form of the rules of procedure. Next, whereby the cases which related with the fact, insufficiency or contradiction of reasons. The fifth is any violation cases or distortion to application of the law in terms of foreign law relating to the personal statute. And the last one is any cases with contradicting decision of different courts and written in last spring. Now let's look at the Constitutional Council. So in the Constitutional Council, it was consist of 9 members including the court president. These 9 members of the Constitutional Councils are appointed as follows. First, which is the 3 members by the President of the Republic, 4 members by 2 houses of the Parliament, 1 member by the Supreme Court, and 1 member by the Council of State. So what does the Constitutional Council do? The Constitutional Council is charged to take care of the respect of the Constitution and the regularity of the operation of referendum. He also takes care the election of the President of the Republic and legislative elections. In addition, he also proclaims the result of this operation. But how many years these 9 members of Constitutional Council, including the current president, will serve for the country of Algeria? Here is the answers. The presidents and the members of the Constitutional Council are appointed for a single 6-year term, with half of the membership renewed every 3 years. We have already done with the 2 of the most important thing under the judiciary of the Algeria, which is the Supreme Court and the Constitutional Council. Now let's look at another authorities. There are also important under the judiciary of the Algeria, which is the first one, the jurisdiction of the prestige, the court. In fact, the jurisdiction of common right are qualified for all litigation relating to civil proceedings, commercial or social. There are the court of first resort in the following matters. So let's look at this matter one by one. The first matter is all the movable and real action whose amount does not exceed 2,000 dalton. Second matter is the infringement of the transportation system. The next matter is all the action relating to the right whose amount does not exceed 300 dalton. And the last matter is any dispute matter relating to the rural beams, habitation, and all professional use the commercial beams. Now we move to the jurisdiction of the second degree, which is the Courts of Appeal. In this second jurisdiction of degree, there are 48 courts of appeal in the Algerian territory. There are courts of jurisdiction for all the calls formed against the judgment given in all matter by the courts in the first resort. In the same way, they know in last spring of the demand for payment of judges when the conflict relates to 2 jurisdictions within the competence of the same court and the request for challenge directed against the court of first spring. In addition, the court are qualified in the first resort for any litigation relating to the state or one its district, which is the court of appeal is depend on the country itself, the state itself. It cannot be applied by other state, which means the court of appeal for the state A is used for the state A, and the court of appeal for the state B is used for the state B. It cannot be used for the state A. Next is Court of Auditors. The Court of Auditors is in charge of control of the public purse, local authorities, and public service. The other functions of Court of Auditor is it draws up an annual report which is addressed to the President of the Republic. In addition, under the Court of Auditors, the law determines attributions, the organization and the operation of the Court of Auditors, and the sanction of its investigation. Now we move to the State Council. The creation of the State Council is very recent. Organic Law of May 30 of 1998 instituted this jurisdiction. In addition, the State Council is regarded as a regulating body of the administrative jurisdiction activity. What is the concern of the State Council? The State Council is concerns the judicial power and ensures unification of administrative jurisprudence through the country and take care of the respect of the law. There are 2 kinds of competence of the jurisdiction, and it is qualified for the resource in first and last arise for 2 kinds. So let's look at these 2 kinds of competence. The first is actions in cancellation form against the lawful or individual decision returned by the central administrative authorities of the national public institution, and the national professional organization. And the second is the actions in interpretation and appreciation of the legality of the acts which concern the administrative dispute. And the last one is the administrative jurisdiction, whereby the administrative court are qualified jurisdiction of common rights for the administrative disputes. That's all from me. Thank you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nur Safiah binti Sohaimi and I will present about political parties in Algeria. For the political system in Algeria, they are using multi-party political system, and we can see in their countries there are a lot of political parties that run for election to gain the power. So they often form coalition government with those who have the similar principle with their parties because it is hard to gain the power alone. In their constitution, they permit any party to be formed but not on the basis of religion, race, language, gender, region or corporate. And also they are not allowed to violate values and components of Algeria's identity. Political parties in Algeria have two names, which is one in English and also one in French, but usually they use the initial from their French name, and we can see about this later. Moving to their political parties, they have parliamentary parties and also they have illegal parties in Algeria. So for the first one, under parliamentary parties, there are a lot of parties that run for the election, and these are only some of them. So as I stated before, most of the parties in Algeria is called by their initial of their French name. For example, FLN stands for Front de Libération Nationale, and also RND is for Rassemblement National Democratique. Sorry, I could not pronounce the French in the right way. So I will talk a little bit about FLN. FLN was the one who made an agreement with France to end the Algerian War, and this end of Algerian War is a signal of end of colonial French rule in Algeria. FLN is also the only legal political party in Algeria in 1962 until other parties legalized in 1989. These are the political parties and the parliamentary parties in Algeria. Illegal parties, only one party, which is FIS. Basically, they are being banned because in 1992 they almost won the election, but the military cancelled the parliamentary election and banned FIS, and because of this, it led to civil war that takes a lot of life in Algeria. So moving to electoral process in Algeria. So for general features, the president is directly elected to a 5-year term for a maximum of 2 terms. But in 2008, these term limits were removed, allowing the President Abdelaziz Bouteflika to serve for 4 terms, which is more than 2 terms, but were reinstated in 2016. So the Interior Ministry is the one who in charge of the election process. For the electoral system, they are different for each institution. For the president election, they use 2-round majority system, where when the first round there is no one received enough vote, then they will do the second one to choose between the top 2 candidates. And also for the upper house, they use first past the post system, where the one who have the most vote will win. And for the lower house, they use 1-round proportional system, and we will look about this later. For the presidency, the president is the head of state. Election will occur every 5 years, and they will do direct election. The voting system will do 2-round majority system, as I said before, and if there is vacancy, the head of the upper house of the parliament will temporarily assume the presidency until new elections are held. For the upper house in Algeria, they call it as Council of Nations. They have 144 seats, 2/3 are elected and 1/3 are appointed by President. For the voting system, they will use simple majority. The frequency of election of upper house, the senator will serve for 6 terms, and the other half from the elected seats will run for election for each 3 years. So if there is vacancy, they will do by election to fulfill the vacancies. Electoral campaign will last for 21 days plus 2 days for voter reflection. The last one is lower house. They will do the election every 5 years. The voting system, they will do list proportional representation, where the parties make list of candidates to be elected, and seats are distributed to each party in proportion to the number of votes the party received. The number of elected officials were 462,
If there is vacancy, the next candidate on electoral list of departed member of parliament is appointed, and for electoral campaign is the same as the upper house. So that's all from me. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nabilah Syamini bt.Jusoh. Inshallah, I will present about Algeria's foreign policy. Algeria's foreign policy remains largely based on the ideological principle that emanated from its liberation struggle and largely informed its conduct of foreign relations since independence. The main tenets in question are self-determination, non-interference, and the respect of state sovereignty and negotiations. Under Abdelaziz Bouteflika, Algeria's foreign policy arguably became even more entrenched in ideology. Recently, Algeria elected a new president almost a year after ousting President Bouteflika. Foreign policy issues were noticeable in the speech of the new Algeria President Abdelmadjid Tebboune after his inauguration on December 19, 2019, who announced his intention to restore Algeria's diplomatic role, especially in its neighboring region. His was hardline and provocative toward contentious issues with Morocco, especially the issues of Western Sahara and the opening of land borders. Hence, the adoption of a 10-year period helped to foresee the future of the Algerian foreign policy during the coming period. It should be emphasized that foreign policy in terms of stability and volatility is highly dependent on a group of internal and external objective factors that are its primary determinants. Okay, let's discuss about Algeria's foreign policy and the regional system, a mutual influence. The regional subsystem is an appropriate framework for studying political, economic, and security interaction between countries of the region. In view of the interdependence relationship between the nature of the existing regional system and the orientation of the foreign policy of the country of the region, it is not possible to draw a scenario for the future of this policy without understanding its regional and internal structural elements. There are many determinants that make the relationship of Algerian foreign policy with its regional surrounding governed by a factor of mutual influence. First, Algeria's position, along with Morocco as a central country in the Maghreb system, and the fact that any significant change in its internal political scene will automatically be reflected in its regional environment. One of the signs of Algeria's importance in the Maghreb political scene is that it is the only Arab country that received the request of the internationally recognized Libyan government to activate a security cooperation agreement alongside Turkey, the United States of America, Britain, and Italy. The second determinant is the unrest that threatens Algeria's national security in the regional context of Algeria, especially the continuation of the crisis in Libya, which share with Algeria a 982-kilometer difficult to monitor border. Security chaos and political instability in Algeria regional context pose both a challenge and an opportunity for Algeria diplomacy to regain its vitality. Yet this depends on the ability of the new regime in Algeria to use this regional situation well to its advantage to return to the regional scenes and become a major regional actor. The last determinant is Algerians' fear that its absence from Libyan scene will make other countries threaten their influence there and from regional alliance against the geopolitical interests of Algeria, including Morocco, which still play an important role in mediating between the Libyan parties. This means that the growing international intervention in the Libya issue call for Algeria to be present in any international or regional agreement on its final settlement. That's all for me. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Siti Nur and I'm going to present on Algeria's current issues. Algeria currently has been going through a political and social crisis. What happened in Algeria last year is the Algerian protest, which also known as the Iraq movement, is considered as the largest and most sustained anti-government demonstrations, with its first goal to protest the re-election bid of their fourth-term President Abdulaziz Bouteflika, which has ruled the country nearly for 20 years. Despite the massive demonstration, the protest organizers want it to remain as a peaceful protest because they are committed to achieving the change they desire through the unusual means of radical non-violence. The question is, what's fueling the country's mass protest movement? The first one is because of Bouteflika's bid for fifth term. He has been in power since 1999 and has appeared publicly only rarely since suffering a stroke in 2013. Under his ruling, the country suffered from corruption, nepotism among the leaders, and mismanagement of the country's resources. Additional factors of the protests include high unemployment and economic stagnation. As for high unemployment, in Algeria, 70% of the population is below the age of 30. Many of these young people feel like they don't have a future in the country because of a lack of job opportunities. More than 1 in 4 Algerians under the age of 30 are unemployed. As for economic stagnation, following the decline of oil and gas export revenues in 2014, Algeria's economic model appears increasingly unsustainable due to a lack of investment. All these factors has left the ordinary Algerians with the only option, which is to voice their frustration and take it to the streets to demand change. So now let's take a look at the timeline of Algerians' protests, which highlights important progress throughout the demonstration. Beginning February 16, Algerians flooded the streets every Friday in the capital Algiers and elsewhere to protest the re-election of the same president. On March 27, Algeria's army chief Ahmed Salah urged President Bouteflika to step down. April 2, Abdelaziz Bouteflika resigned from office as well following the interim president is Abdulkadir bin Salah, and corruption investigation as well has been opened into some of those around the former leader. After Bouteflika's resignation, Algerians then demands a transition to a more democratic governance. By May, a number of prominent figures were arrested regarding the corruption cases, including Bouteflika's allies, his brother, and top businessmen. By June, an issue of Berber flags waved by the protesters has led to police arrest. By September 15, government announced a presidential election to take place on 12 December, and on December 12, Abdelmajid Tebboune has been elected as new president. However, his election is considered as illegitimate by the Algerians as they resist to be ruled under the same old system. So this protest still goes on till today as the protesters want to carry on until they get full and transparent democracy. Throughout the Iraq movement, there are some issues that arise during the protest. For example, first, freedom of assembly. The authorities have been violating the people's right to assembly as they refuse to authorize a national forum set up by Iraq activists, as well as arrested hundreds of peaceful protesters that take part in the demonstration. Second, freedom of speech. The authoritarian also violate the freedom of speech, which includes the prosecution of Algerian citizens for critical posts on social media. In the case of Malik Riahi, he was fined 700,000 Algerian dinars for publishing photos of the police crackdown on marching students and called them as abusing power. Another case is a man carrying a sign demanding the departure of those who hold power in Algeria near a stadium in Khairul, where the Algerian team was playing. He was then deported to Algeria to be prosecuted and sentenced. And third, freedom of expression. Protesters were jailed over Berber flags for undermining national unity by the authority. This is seen as a suppression of free expression as well as a violation of identity. In conclusion, Throughout the video, we have explored about Algeria and its political system in details. These findings from our research have provided us new insights about what is going on in Algeria, as well as benefit us in terms of the knowledge and how we apply what we have learned in class onto it. Algeria has been facing a lot of changes last year, where the country has hoped to change for the better with the democratic reforms they are planning. The message throughout the Iraq was consistently one of unity, peace, and solidarity as a continuation of the struggle for justice and decolonization.